Hey, Word for Thought Pod. I'm Nicole, and I'm here with my second podcast on how the representation of Islam is affected by terrorism. And I'm here with guest host Basim Thabit.
Hi, guys.
So, the first thing we're going to be discussing is media representation and how Islam and radicalized terrorism that is related to Islam is portrayed in the media. So it's arguable that media coverage on Muslim extremist terrorism is a lot bigger than media coverage on non-Muslim terrorism. Do you feel that this is true?
I 100% do believe that Islam does face majority discrimination because, each religion does have extremism and people who do violent acts. So I don't really understand why Islam has to face majority of that when, people like, for example, they're like the KKK, for example, in a way.
Period. Okay, so research done by the University of Alabama suggests that terrorist attacks receive 357% more press attention than terror attacks committed by non-Muslims or terror attacks that are not related to religion. So that's like an entire 357%. But what's really, really interesting about this, and by the way, these statistics were determined between 2006 and 2005. So even though between this time period, 357% more press attention has been given to Islamic attacks, between 2008 and 2016, white and right-wing terrorists carried out nearly twice as many terrorist attacks than terrorist attacks linked to extremist Islam. What do you think about that? I think that's actually extremely interesting because I don't hear much about it.
100%. I do feel like that's extremely interesting because, whenever there's a terrorist attack that has to do with Muslims, it's automatically all over the news. But when things like this happen, with other religions, such as what you just said, I don't hear anything about it. So I personally do believe that Islam does face majority discrimination when it comes to these particular situations.
So it's pretty obvious that there's a lot more news coverage on extremist Islamic terrorism rather than, terrorism done by other races or other religions or with like different drives. Do you feel like this affects your life, or do you feel like you get some sort of discrimination because of this coverage?
And I do feel like I, get discrimination because of my religion. Of course, I don't really get that much discrimination. I've lived in Canada my whole life. I've been born here. We feel like it's a very welcoming country. But, sometimes people may say things that hurt. For example, sometimes in my classes, people may make jokes about, the word that most people hear, Allahu Akbar, which means God's the greatest. People may incorporate that when they are, when they're in any situation, they may say things like that, which is honestly not right because they don't really know the true meaning of it. They think of it as a way to say something, like a word to say. Yeah, like a word to say before, a bomb happens or something, because that's what the media portrays it to be.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like racial jokes are done more directed towards Islam and like Muslim people than they would be for other religions?
For sure, I do believe that because personally, as Islam has been shown by the media.
So would you say that you face discrimination in your daily life, or do you think it's just once in a while, but it's not actually truly directed towards you, honestly?
Personally, I don't feel like I face discrimination every day. Maybe once in a blue moon, but I personally do believe that the females in our religion who wear the hijab face much more discrimination than the males because of the symbol that they put.
Do you see that? Like, for example, with people our age or in your school, or just in our community, do you see that ever happen?
Oh, yeah, sometimes I do see it. I do see that maybe if you're in a so-called majority white area and you see a female wearing the hijab, you can see the stares, you can see the dirty looks. But I can't really, maybe it's just because they're not used to it there. But yeah, for sure, 100%.
Mm-hmm. So we both know, or we both think that media misrepresents your religion, but in what ways do you think it's misrepresented? And what do you really think your religion, what its values are?
I 100% believe that our religion is misrepresented during the media. I also do believe that there are extremists in our religion who also portray that image. So, you see ISIS and you see those people that obviously claim they're Muslim, but personally, us Muslims, we for sure 100% believe that they're not Muslims, because our book, the Quran, does not say anything about killing or taking over land or anything to do with sexism. And yeah, 100%.
So what do you think Islam is? How would you describe it?
I think Islam is a very peaceful religion. I think that people don't really understand it because of what the media portrays and what some extremists portray as well. I do believe that the Quran has stated that there's several factors that say that Islam is a very peaceful religion. Actually, the word Islam actually means peace.
It does?
It does. It really
That's
does.
really cool.
I know. People don't really know that. And I think that facts stating that Islam is a sexist religion and stuff like that, when they don't really know that Islam was actually the first religion to allow women to own property, allow them to have divorces and marriages. Even before that, when so-called Christians and white people, they didn't have that law as well, when back then when women were discriminated against. I don't think that people really know that.
I actually had no idea, like, most of the stuff that you just said. That's extremely interesting, because I feel like, I honestly do feel like it's, they show a completely different image of Islam online. And, yeah, I don't know, that's really interesting. Do you think that misrepresentation of Islam has been getting better or worse over the past decade? Like, do you think that they're kind of warping it into something, worse recently, or do you think it's slowly getting better?
That's a hard question, because I haven't been paying attention to the media as much, but I personally do think that it is getting better, only because I think that people are starting to understand what Islam is, especially, me going to a Catholic school and having there's many Muslims that go to that school. I think it showed the Catholics and the Christians that, us Muslims, we're just like you. We just have different beliefs. And yeah, I personally 100% do believe that it's getting better than how it was before.
So you said that you don't really have to face discrimination on like a regular day-to-day basis, but let's say you were applying for a job. Do you think you would have a lower chance of getting a job because of how you look or your race, or your religion? Or do you think it would still be equal?
I'm not really sure, but I personally think that it will be equal, but at the same time, I feel like if a white person came in, I do believe that they may get the job just because of their race. But at the same time, that's not really something to say, because, I see many Muslims, working, so I wouldn't really think that. I'm not really sure. That's a hard question.
But I think the fact that you don't know the answer to that question kind of says it all. Because for me, I wouldn't have to worry about that. I'm a white person.
For sure.
I wouldn't have to worry about that. That already just shows the oppression of Islam and of Muslim people. I wouldn't have to think about that. I'm a Christian white person. I wouldn't have to think about that. But someone like you would have to. And I think that's the big difference between not facing discrimination and facing discrimination. Even if you don't realize it in your day-to-day life, it's sometimes a lot more subconscious than you think. Because you already are thinking, okay, well, if a white person walks in, I might not get this job.
It's something that I can't even think about, Yeah, you're right, for sure.
So I think it's also subconscious in that you may have been oppressed without even knowing it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But something I do wonder is, I've been applying for a job since the summer, and on the application it says what language you've been what language you speak, and I put Arabic and English, and I've applied everywhere, in person, online, and I haven't really even gotten an interview. So that's not really something to say that maybe that's the reason, but maybe it is. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why they ask for what languages you speak is to know, what languages you speak so that you can, talk to more customers or whatever. And I also applied to many jobs, and I did not get any responses. So I don't know if that actually has something to do about your religion, but if it does, that'd be very interesting.
No, I think that was a pretty stupid answer. That actually makes no sense, honestly.
But there were actually, a lot of different, experiments done where they would put people down with with the same person, same application, just different last names. So one last name would have would be something that you can find easily in a Muslim country, and then one with a very white last name. And the people with the white last name would usually get more calls back, So this is kind of a random question asked, but I just want to know your opinion. What are your thoughts on reverse racism?
Um, I personally believe that racism is everywhere, regardless of your color or your, religion. But I do believe that this is just an obvious answer. I personally do believe that white people don't face as much racism as, a Muslim person, Indian, or anyone ethnic. I personally do believe that there's this idea that if you're white, you're, automatically just... it's hard to explain, but I really don't think that they face it. But I do believe that maybe if they were in a Muslim country or a other country that's predominantly something like another ethnicity, I do personally believe that they will face racism because they're not really around people that look like them.
So you're saying that there's always going to be racism towards the minority, basically?
Yeah, for sure. I do believe that. Yes.
Okay, but what about here in Canada? Like, would you say that there's, like, white people face any sort of discrimination, honestly?
Honestly, no, because, Canada is a majority white population, and, well, around Canada it is. Maybe in certain areas it's not, but it is a majority white population. I don't really think that it will face racism unless if it's, in a area like, Brampton, which is majority of Indian descent. I do believe that maybe white people will face discrimination because they are the minority. But in Canada in general, I don't really think so, to be honest.
So I heard someone say this, I don't know who it was, but they said that if you grew up in a family where you were abused by a man, or if your mother was abused by your father, you will grow up to have some sort of bias against men. And that is just because that's your own sort of defense. That's how you were brought up. Yes. You saw them damaging women.
Yes.
So you will always, be against men.
Yes.
So when we hear reverse racism and we think that white people are getting oppressed or discriminated against, it's really just this defense mechanism. Once again, you're just protecting yourself from people that historically have continuously oppressed your religion or your race. So I wouldn't say that reverse racism is actually a real thing and that white people are being discriminated against. It's just kind of the trend. Like, white people have clearly been more racist towards people of different, people of color or people of different religions. So I do think that reverse racism isn't real, and that basically it's just, the way you grew up due to your circumstances.
I do understand where you're coming from, but I was mainly, incorporating it against the minority. So obviously I do agree with you. Of course, reverse racism isn't really common, but if you were a minority in a certain place, you may experience racism. For example, if a white person went to Saudi Arabia, they may experience racism because they don't look as the other people, or they're not part of the religion. But I do see where you're coming from, and I 100% agree with you. I was just mainly focusing on if you were a minority in a place.
But is that even reverse racism then? Because I just think that's racism. Reverse racism is basically when, I guess it must be white people, but basically, I don't even know how to describe it. It's basically when the person that has been oppressing other people, the people start oppressing the oppressor, if that makes any sense.
Oh, that's what you were talking about. That's what you were trying to say.
I think that's what reverse racism is.
Oh.
But what you're saying about the minority, that's basically racism. 100%, yeah. But I think that in order for there to be racism, there has in order for you to be racist towards a certain population, they have to be a minority.
Yeah, for sure. No, but as you were saying of reverse racism, I thought you were basically saying if it basically happened to them, but I didn't really know what it specifically meant. But in that case, then no, if 100% they don't experience it, because I don't really think that people start the racism with them, if that makes...
Do you think that there are any solutions to the misrepresentation of Islam?
For sure, I do believe there's a solution. There's always a solution in everything. I think that before you judge someone, you should really get to know the person and what they believe in before you judge them. Because I don't think it's fair, for example, if let's just say I'm from Saudi Arabia, and a Christian white person came to Saudi Arabia, and I automatically did not like them because of what I heard about their religion or something, which obviously that's not me. But 100% there should be a solution, and the solution should be that you shouldn't judge a person before you know them, or you shouldn't judge a religion before you know them. You should get to know the religion. You should go and speak to an actual Muslim instead of getting your websites from online, which anybody can publish. You should go speak to a imam or a hajjah or haji or someone that really, really knows Islam. And you should just, get your judgments from there. That's what I believe the solution should be.
What were those 3 different people that you mentioned?
Oh, basically, an imam is basically like, it's like a priest, but it's basically like it's technically like a priest, except it's a like leader for a Muslim, like the person that you can go to if you need help, the person that basically leads the prayer. They have several aspects. And a haji and a hajjah a haji is basically a man that has completed pilgrimage, and a hajjah is a woman that's completed pilgrimage. So basically they took the opportunity to go to Saudi Arabia, to Mecca, and basically complete pilgrimage, which is one of our obligations to do.
And what's pilgrimage?
A pilgrimage is basically a mandatory thing in Islam. It's basically where you go to Mecca and you have to do certain rituals or you have to do several things that is a commandment of Islam, but it's only for the people who are financially stable, who aren't sick, who are able to go. It's obligatory for them.
What do you mean by it's obligatory?
I meant like it's obligatory for people who are financially stable, who can, who are not sick or something. You know what I mean? But if you're not financially stable, then you don't have to, if you know what I mean.
It's obligatory. Like you have to do it?
Like you don't have to do it, but it is one of the...
Like it's something you should do? I'm confused. What do you mean by it's obligatory?
Like it's something that you should do if you are able to do. If you're able to do it, if that makes sense. Like, there's technically no excuse for it, only if you're sick, or only if you are not financially stable, or only if you have any other circumstances that are not allowing you to go. But if you are financially stable and you are healthy, then you 100% should go.
Okay. So back to like the solutions thing. Well, yeah, obviously we should be more open-minded when meeting Muslim people and not jump to conclusions. But how do you think we can project this idea onto our generation and onto future generations?
Like project as in, what do you mean by that?
Teach it to them.
Oh, teach it to them? Social media is a big aspect of our lives in today's generation. So I do believe that maybe creating a social media page of Islam or something, or
just spreading the word.
Spreading the word, yeah, for sure. Or for example, if they have any questions, they can directly message a Muslim and ask them. Other solutions can be just, I don't know.
Do you think like Islam should be taught at school? Do you think religion, like in general, should be taught at school? Well, you go to a Catholic school, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think learning about Christianity is beneficial to you in any way?
Well, for me, it's not, but it is a choice that I made to do. So I cannot come and be like, oh, I don't want to learn about Christianity when I made the decision to go to a Catholic school. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I do believe that religion should be taught in schools. If you want to go to a religious school, I believe that it is 100% your choice. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. Okay,
but do you think it's like a good idea for you, even though you're a Muslim, to understand the religion of someone else? Like, do you think it'd be beneficial for me, for example, like someone who's Christian, to learn about Islam or Buddhism or like Hinduism, any other religion? Do you think it'd be beneficial? I think that would actually be really helpful for our society to learn about other religions and become more open-minded that way.
Yeah, for sure. I do believe that, that is a really, really good idea because even though you do not believe that religion, you still need to, learn other religions. You need to understand those religions because it's very important because there's many different religions. There's Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Like you can go on and on. There's so many different religions. And I feel like it is important that you at least learn it so you have an idea of it. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to believe it. But as long as you learn from it, it's beneficial for society.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that would just be a really good way to, kind of make this new generation, and our generation a lot more open-minded, because our generation will be growing up to, have more kids, and then this is our future, really. So if we start teaching this generation and younger generations about different religions and different cultures, we will become inevitably much more open-minded. So we can create a much more open-minded future as well. And I think this would just be a really great way to incorporate this mindset. But I also agree with what you were saying about social media, because, for example, media coverage, once again, once there's a terrorist attack that has something to do about ISIS or any sort of extremist radical terrorist attack that has to do with Islam, we hear about it all over social media as well. And that's kind of where things can get out of hand, because there isn't really that much of a restriction. People can say whatever they want to say. So if we use this for positive reasons and actually spread positive messages about different religions, I feel like this can be a really great way and a perfect gateway to spreading important and useful information about religion.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with you. Another thing that I think that people don't really know is, since I do go to a Catholic school, that's something I didn't know either. But in the grade 11 religion curriculum, you actually have to learn about every single religion. I think people didn't really know that because it's a Catholic school, you have to learn about, things in Christianity and stuff like that. But actually, that's something I didn't know until this year. And we've learned about Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Sikhism. We've learned about it all. So I think that was a very good way for the different Peel District School Board to incorporate that into the education system, so that, us students can get an idea of each religion before we make a judgment.
Yeah, I had no idea that was a thing. That's really cool. That's pretty dope. Do you think learning about these different religions kind of opened your eyes to them a bit more? By any chance, did you have some sort of bias against one and now maybe you don't anymore?
I didn't, not really, because I personally, my aspect in life is I believe that, do what you want and believe what you want. So I didn't really have any negative aspect or, biased view against any religion. I just didn't really know certain religions. So it did open my mind, and it showed me what each religion, other than my religion, of course, what they believe in, their traditional values, the history of it. For example, Sikhism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, I had no clue about. I had no knowledge about it, and then I learned a lot. I really did. I think it was an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, that's super dope.
So Nicole, I have a question for you. So basically, I've seen in the years that people who didn't really know much about Islam actually had a different view about Islam, a more positive view about Islam once they really got to know the religion after speaking to a Muslim or going and reading the Quran, the translated version. So my question to you is, how has your view of Islam changed? Have you ever, had any other view or didn't really know, and then it changed after you have learned about the religion?
So obviously when there was a lot of terrorism happening, I was surrounded by negative points of view on Islam.
Yeah.
However, I didn't really buy into it too much, and I always wanted to, I've been asking you about it a lot over the years, for sure, because I don't want to have a negative bias against an entire population of people just because of a few actions, which are huge, and that's absolutely not saying that they aren't, worthy of attention. However, they don't represent the entirety of Islam, and I really do believe that Islam is extremely peaceful, and their values are completely different than what terrorism and ISIS and other terrorist organizations are portraying, or their values that they're portraying, or the way the media represents them. Obviously, I've had some doubts, because who wouldn't? However, no, my idea of Islam is not negative at the moment, no.
No, that's really amazing to hear. Of course, I'm pretty sure whenever something blows up or whenever, I mean, what I mean by blow up is I mean on the internet. I meant on the internet. you know, oh, I can't with myself. But yeah, whenever things, blow up on the internet or is all over social media or all over news attention, I do believe that people may have, people will judge, of course, without knowing the truth. So it's amazing to see that you have grown from that. And of course, I know you aren't like that. You're accepting of everyone, which is amazing. But yeah, it's amazing to hear your experience.
I'm sorry, I'm still laughing about the blow up thing.
I know.
Oh, okay. We can pause. So another thing I think that's really interesting is the Muslim ban that the U.S. has enacted. So this is enacted by President Donald Trump, and I've actually, one of my friends actually was affected by it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's very sad to hear.
Well, yeah, she was okay eventually. She was okay, but they stopped her. And a lot of this has to do because of the terrorism that's been happening recently. However, I don't really think it's completely fair. No, I simply don't believe it's simply fair. Yeah.
No, I feel like it's honestly such a stupid reason, personally. It's not that hard to do a background check and to get know the person before you allow them into a country. So for Donald Trump to have this idea that it'll be beneficial to ban certain Muslim countries into the United States because of the minority of the because of a small group of people that make it look bad, that's extremely, it's not even something I can talk about because it's just straight up stupid, honestly. It's like as if me saying that, the KKK, for example, they did an act in, I don't know, Dubai. Oops, that was my fault. Anyways, the KKK, for example, they did, they're doing acts of terrorism around the world, and then Dubai or the United Arab Emirates, not Dubai. I need to wake up. The United Arab Emirates, for example, has a white ban in a way, or a Christian ban. It doesn't make sense because it's not everyone in the religion that's doing it. So it's really stupid, honestly. 100%, I do believe that it is. It's just so stupid to talk about because personally, it doesn't solve anything. For Donald Trump to come and say that the solution to ISIS and the solution to terrorism in the United States or whatever's going on is to have a Muslim ban. It's just so dumb to even talk about because you cannot just justify that having a Muslim ban from certain Muslim countries is going to help anything, honestly. It's basically discriminatory against the hardworking, very peaceful, nice Muslims that just follow their faith and they just want to have a better life in America. You know what I mean? So for him to just justify saying that having a Muslim ban will help the United States, it's just so stupid, honestly. It shouldn't even be a thing. I think that there's background checks. There's so much things you can look at a person before you allow them into your country. And having a Muslim ban is just the dumbest thing, honestly. It's very racist as well.
Mm-hmm. I completely believe that there are many different approaches you can take to it by taking a look at many different things and background checks, like you said, before you say that you can't come into a country or you can come into a country. And there are so many peaceful people that just want to get into the U.S. I mean, the vast majority.
For sure.
Yeah, it's only a few certain individuals, right?
Yeah, there's 1.2 billion Muslims in the world,
Yeah, so I think there are many different approaches, and that the approach Donald Trump took was irrational and inappropriate.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, Potters, that's about all we have for today. Feel free to DM us or DM Word for Thought Pod on Instagram if you have any questions for Basim or I, and we will hopefully respond. Stay engaged and stay tuned on my Instagram for upcoming podcasts or any polls or any questions we have for you guys. Thank you so much and stay tuned.
Thank you for having me. Bye, guys.